Mm-hmm.
And from last week, there was this quote. It said, "Community building is the most important action of our century. For the 21st century to be a time of spirituality, the spirit of togetherness must guide us." That's why I love that this last chapter, entitled "The Opposite of Fear," is us. What we do to be in community with each other. How is it that we somehow become that beloved community, as Martin Luther King called it, the beloved community that surrounds each of us with what we need in the moment? So I want you to think back about your life. You know, that good American independent spirit life. And where is it that you could not have survived without a community around you? Where is it that some beloved community of some sort or another surrounded you and carried you through a period? When was that for you?
Well, for me, it was when I got the valley fever. Just really, really down, and Earl wasn't here, and I had to depend on daughter-in-law and son. And no energy at all. It was just completely without.
Yeah. And so all of those things that you're normally able to connect to and use as your resources just weren't there in the same way.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. How about the rest of you?
Well, for me, it was when I was a young mom and we lived in Indonesia. We were doing community development work out in a rural village, and we had a group of staff there, both American and Indonesian, and I moved into this little village in the middle of nowhere with a 2-year-old and an infant, and it was the older women on the staff that really supported me and guided me and helped me figure out how to do all this, both on a couple of women on our Indonesian staff, and then one of the women, an older woman on our American staff, just kind of guided me in being a mom in this unexpected environment.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the most important things about community is you don't have to reinvent things like how to be a mom. You might have to figure out what it means for you, but there's a lot of skills and a lot of techniques that have already been developed for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
For me, this is still relatively recent. When my husband became ill, which was 2015, he grew up in what was the Belgian Congo, and then it became Zaire, and now it's DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. But he spent his high school years at a boarding school, the American School of Kinshasa, Congo, and it was during a time, the late 60s, when I think it was 2/3 of the country was in rebellion. Not in Kinshasa itself where the school was, but there were a lot of kids there far away from their families, and all these stories going on about what was happening out there, you know, they really bonded. And those people, I've gotten to know them over the years, but when he was sick, they just rallied around, and most of them were retired by then. They came and stayed with me and helped with just everything that needed to be done. He was having infusions, taking him to the hospital and doing things that the appointments I didn't have to be at so that I could have a break, and then just helping me sometimes with cooking or shopping or, you know, whatever it was. And that community it was a real extended family for him his whole life, but it's become that for me as well. So.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I had, when I got sober, I had a wonderful home group and sponsor who really supported me. And I went every day to meetings. They were study group, big book study group meetings. And that group of 6 or 8 people just walked me through how do you live life without alcohol.
Yeah.
And it was huge. And the sponsor's been my sponsor 31 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But isn't that one of the powers of 12-step programs?
Oh,
Is that
absolutely.
It tells you that this path that you were trying to do all by yourself doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
I've had so many times in my life when people have shown up. You know, I shared about dealing with my mom's dementia and this group of women. We all had moms with dementia. You know, when I had my cancer, I had a major accident a few years before that, got run over by a car in a parking lot. And it was just amazing to me how many people were there with tangible help and just supportive and loving gestures. I'm in a Buddhist meditation class, and the other night we were thinking about our teachers through our lives and how many teachers we'd had different things. And this is kind of like that too. When you think about this huge crowd of people that have enabled you to go on your journey, it's pretty overwhelming. I mean, it's like a little army marching along with you. And
Yeah.
I try to remind myself of that in this time that's a little scary, just that, you know, in times when things are hard, kindness seems to appear, you know, and
Yeah.
certainly has in my life.
The book of Hebrews has a phrase that they use, that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And what you just said reminds me of that. All those people that are there surrounding us and being part of us. And we all need that in different ways through our life. When I moved from Colorado down to Texas, I was 14 years old, sophomore in high school, maybe 15 years old. Moved down there, knew nobody, right? And the folks around, I was reminded of this just this last week as one of my friends, Gilbert, who was the best runner. You know, he was the man on the cross country team. And he reminded me that they used to call me that first year Colorado as a nickname because of where I'd moved from. And I remembered how much they surrounded that kid who was completely lost and helped him feel part of something greater. They were my beloved community, my Sangha, right? And we all, for a lot of different reasons, need a beloved community around us. Sometimes we don't even anticipate why we need it, but we need it so that it can become, as the title of the chapter says, so it can become the opposite of whatever the fear is that comes into our life. Whatever it is that's too big or too unknown or too overwhelming, we become that antidote to it. Yes, Nancy.
I can remember years ago, I got a job, and I was the first female that had that job. It was as assistant principal in a school. And years later, I found out that the head secretary had said, "We are going to make this woman succeed." And I didn't realize that until years and years afterwards. But she was a huge part of me surviving and doing okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we all need that cloud, right? That helps do some things so that we don't have to, that make things run smoother than we would by ourselves, right? In all kinds of different ways. Like right now we have a little plumbing problem at the church. I'm glad that Steve is here so I don't have to worry about it, right? All of those kinds of things. Who is it that becomes that community around us? But part of being able to do that is us being in a space where we aren't trying to do it all ourselves, but to mindfully walk through life in a way that we notice and see what else is true. but none of us do that perfectly because because there's so much that calls our heart out of it. And so I like the practice that she's talked about, how you have to do mindful walking. You can begin by making a contract with a staircase. And you just walk up the staircase, and whenever it is that you're no longer mindfully placing your feet, then you go back to the bottom and start over again. Mm-hmm. Right? And I thought about that, and I thought I might have to start with a staircase that has 2 steps. Right?
Well, we're lucky. Very few houses have a whole set of stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how is it that we just are so present in that moment? What do you put in place so that you are truly being in the presence and thinking about that which is around you in every moment? Or how much do you just let life sweep you along? And I don't mean in a good way, because life does that. It carries us, but sometimes it carries us without us being thoughtful about it. What do you put in place so that you are mindful in that moment? Yes, Mary.
So one of the reasons I started doing meditation several years ago is because I had such a monkey mind, and I have a lot of anxiety, and I found myself like my mind was always somewhere else when I was doing things. And it got to be where I couldn't remember if I did something, like, did I take that Tylenol or did I not? Did I get the mail? It was like I was doing so many things mindlessly. And I realized, because my mind was so busy, that I needed to have some kind of grounding. And so I do daily meditations, but I also, once in a while throughout the day, just stop and say, be conscious of what you're doing. Because my mind is so often somewhere else, and it's not healthy.
Yeah. Thank you. When I was about 27, 28, I drove in 2 years 70,000 miles all over northern Arizona. And oftentimes that was at the end of a day that I'd been teaching all day long. And there were times when I would get to my destination and not remember part of the journey, which is not a very safe thing to do, right? That's what you don't want to do. But I do, as I think back on it, I realized that what I did do was trust that other people are going to be driving the way other people should be driving. And anytime we're on the roads, do you recognize how much you depend on the other drivers driving the way you think they ought to drive? And in a very real way, that's what we have to be aware of in life, and not just take for granted that they are, but think about it and be aware of their presence around you, driving the vehicles of their lives in such a way that you're not colliding, that you're actually helping each other flow. So as you mindfully think about your life, who are some of the people that you see flowing and helping you? Who are part of your Sangha?
There's things in our life that help us too, like music and nature.
And daughters calling us when we need to be checked up on.
Yes, that's exactly right. And especially now, Sandy, in the midst of all the stuff that's going on and the isolation where we feel ourselves separated from each other, those calls remind us of a greater truth.
Oh, yes, definitely.
one thing Mom and I have enjoyed are the old hymns that we sang when I was growing up in church and that my grandparents probably sang. And it just, that brings a feeling of community and comfort.
Yeah. 20 years ago, my job was, I was just starting in ministry, and I was in Sun City retirement community. And my job was visitation of our most elderly. We had more than 400 people in the congregation over 90 years old.
Wow.
And so it's a retirement community. And so that starts at 55. So, and I started some services in different care centers. And one care center in particular, they would wheel in everyone in their wheelchairs. And some of them were, you could see, not very high functioning. And so what I would do is I would sing the songs and they could sing along however they could. And in that particular care center where there was a lot of non-functioning, the songs were the place where they were most connected, because that reminded them of the community to which they were a part. And I know that in care centers, we often become disconnected from that community. I was really reminded of that when I went to one of the care centers and into the Alzheimer's unit, where there's a lot of disconnection from everything. And I would go there about once a month, once every other month, and I'd visit a man named Bill Finn. And I'd seen him periodically through the months. And one day I asked the typical question that I always ask. You know, I'd say something like, do you want to have a prayer with me before? Oh, no. I said, could I pray for you before I leave? And his response surprised me. He goes, oh, would you? Would you? Because that prayer was reminding him of the community of which he was a part. It was calling him back into that normalcy. And for me, it had become just of course, I just do that. But I forget, it's easy for all of us to forget in the midst of life how important some of those things are. Those things that tie us together. Yes.
You know, I think for me right now, it's easier to be aware of the connections that exist just because I'm so grateful for the people that are supporting me in the things that, like, you know, store clerks and, you know, the people that are in risky situations and enable me to have things delivered, or, you know, I had to go to the dentist and they were all in all their garb. And I think I talked about that, you know, just really aware of how reliant we are on other people in so many situations right now.
Thank you. I think that's exactly what I hope will come out of all this for us, is that we slip out of the isolation of our independent lives and remember to go back into the communal life that we are a part of, and to be thankful for that. Mm-hmm. Catherine?
What I'm aware of is the community that I live in. I live in a small townhome complex. And so there are 6 units on the south side, and I live in one of 6 units that faces to the north. And we had a vacant lot that was adjacent that actually got filled in this last year, and 2 homes were built on there. And the one family has just really gone to town with planting and whatnot. And the other night I walked outside and I walked down to the roadway because I wanted to see the sunset. And the man was out there, and I took the time to speak with him because I'd been wanting to compliment him on all his efforts in his front yard. And we had the most pleasant conversation, and the exchange was about gardening and flowers and playing in the dirt and all that. And I have some things to share from my own garden for my own potted pots. And he had a lady slipper, which is real nice. They're a tiny flower and they're kind of a succulent thing. But he already had one, but I have something else that I can give him. And he said, well, I like to exchange things. And so he said, so I said, well, I'll come on like Saturday and I'll bring a start of this other thing. And then he, it was evident that he wanted to share. And I thought, well, I can take something and I can put it, I can pot it, and I will make it a point. And so that's how community is, and just welcoming him to our neighborhood. And it's so nice to have people in both the houses, because that vacant lot attracted vagrants, and we had to, our people in the complex, our area had to call the police department, and then there was always stuff getting blown in, and it was awful. So it was pretty exciting when it got grown, and now there are 2 families that live there. I don't know the other family because their house faces onto another little street. But I realized how important it is, the neighboring thing, and to keep track of the people that live on my side of the complex, and be in community. And when the weather was cooler, I was baking and sharing, but it's too darn hot to run the oven right now. But we can still be neighbors and just check in on one another and make sure that we keep those lines of communication open, because we do need each other very clearly.
More than what we often do. My wife, back in April, May, she was going through the depths of the chemo and the radiation and whatnot, loved one of our neighbors who we don't even know, because that neighbor is one who scatters flower seeds on top of her rocks, and her whole front yard is just flowers, right? And it's a house we have to pass to leave our neighborhood. And so we would go by that house at least twice a day, one on the way out, one on the way in, and sometimes multiple times. And it just lifted her spirits every single time. And so that neighbor who we don't know was part of the community which lifted her during that time. And so I stopped the other day and said, thank you. You don't know why, but thank you. And do we remember, and are we active in being part of that for each other?
I think just a quick thought is that being in community and, being able to like bake something and physically give it out. But I think plants are kind of neat in that I started some starts of Wandering Jew that I got a plant. Somebody just tasked me with, here, take it home. And it needed a lot of TLC, and I repotted it and broke off parts and rooted it and gave out roots to several, starts to several of the neighbors that way too. But I think giving something like that you baked or something else that's part of you or plant things is, we give a part of ourself along with it. And like a couple of those things that I have had, like that I brought from my other house, and it, my kids each have it where they are, the ones, the 2 that live here have the starts of things. And so, and when I lived elsewhere, I gave a lady slipper start to the male lady. And so we spread these things, and we don't know where they're going, and we don't know where they end up, but I like the thought that, we can seed things and spread things around.
And I think the author talked about that as the living Dharma, right? The wise teachings that we just practice, we live that way. we had a branch that broke off a week or so ago, and I kept meaning to cut it down, but I'd have to go in the backyard and get the ladder, and so it was easier not to. And all of a sudden, 2 days ago, it was just gone. One of the neighbors came and cut that branch. I don't know who, somebody did that. And it's not that all of us have to do everything. It's that all of us do something that becomes the living presence of something better for each other, right? One person plants the flowers, another person bakes a loaf of bread, another person, and all of that becomes that which reminds us of a greater something, right? It's community, but it's also world that's better than just what we ourselves experience and make. Each of you remind me of something more than just what I see. Sometimes it's a pain in the, no, I'm just kidding. But it's also that which tells us it's a greater thing, right? So that living Dharma, and being aware of that living Dharma around us, and choosing to honor and extend that Dharma into the world is important practice. But it has to be very deliberate and intentional. At one point they said, without a community, without a Sangha, a Buddha cannot do much. And all of you trying to live into whatever the Spirit is calling you to do can't do much just by yourself. Not that you shouldn't do anything, but that the acknowledgement of what is also there helping and supporting and lifting you makes what you do much more powerful than what it would all by itself. So who's helping you to be a better Buddha? Who is the community around you?
I think all of the Zoom classes that we go, that you're helping us do, we're Zooming. We're just having such a good meeting people that we don't usually meet. I think it's very inclusive.
One of the nice things that I like about these classes is that I look and I see people from different services that might not have connected on our typical Sunday mornings, right? That all of a sudden have become a community for each other, right? Because somebody's from the 745 or somebody's from the 1045, but now they're also in this beloved community, you know, and we're seeing and hearing and feeling each other. Some of us are even from places like Minnesota.
I was going to say, for me, it seems like right now during this quarantine, the commitments that I have with certain people or certain activities that happen on a weekly basis. I have a friend, a close friend, and my daughter who we have a set time every week. We Skype or call on the phone. The band, you know, every week we do a track or two for the Sunday service. The Casa Maria thing, you know, I could not do that by myself. There's this whole group of people that comes every Saturday morning with their sandwiches and you know, we're providing something that's making a difference. And there's a couple of other things that, and the class, you know, every Wednesday morning at 10, this is a commitment. So.
I have a friend that I'm texting with. She's a friend I made from work, and she said, I feel like a kid again. You know, we giggle and share emojis and brought fun into both of our lives.
Nice, nice.
My two daughters live in opposite sides of the country with my my grandson and my granddaughter. Everybody's split. And I've been reading with my granddaughter for the last 3 years, maybe it's 4 now, once a week we read. First it was picture books, and I would hold my little iPhone, and she'd see the picture and I'd read the story. And now we're doing chapter books, and she's been home since March, not in school. And so now we're reading every day. And every day I have contact with this granddaughter and my daughter she lives with in Virginia. And it's been wonderful establishing this bond with my granddaughter in a way that never would have happened if it weren't for the virus. And then with my other daughter and my grandson and my son-in-law who live up in Boise, at least 3 times a week and sometimes more, we do FaceTime. And it's wonderful. They'll call me, well, Jack, my grandson's having his breakfast, lunch, or dinner, it doesn't matter, during a meal, and he will sit in his high chair and eat and giggle, and we sing songs, and my daughter's there or my son-in-law is there, and we have this thing that happens, and it's just a wonderful time, and it keeps my spirits up and going, because I have always spent a lot of time traveling, seeing my family since they moved away, and I can't do that now. So they have filled that gap, that void in my life in a really wonderful, positive way. Very helpful.
I have so appreciated this class because I love Thich Nhat Hanh, and I love the Sunday services that are live streamed. Anything that is helpful to me to remember what I aspire to, what worldview. I mean, I'm very attracted to the Buddhist way of working with your mind, and so this book has been wonderful for me, and I'm lucky to have some friends, as I said, from this Buddhist group that I've been involved in, who, when we talk, it's different than other friends, because we all kind of aspire to be functioning according to these values that we aspire to. And so, like, I'll vent about something or complain about something, and it goes a little way because you have to have space for that. But we always sort of bring it back to, like, so, what's the best way to look at that and deal with that, rather than just going down the rabbit hole of complaining or whatever. And I really appreciate that. And this book has been like that for me. It's like, oh yeah, that's the way to look at this. That's how I want my mind to work. So this has been really, really helpful to me.
I think there's several things that the collective, the group, allows us to benefit from, right? That we can't do as easily by ourselves. At one point, he said something along the lines of, the suffering inside of us reflects the suffering in the world. And so in you, I see some of what's in me. And as we talk together, we find some solutions, not just for that which is between us, but also that which is within us. And so I think the first thing that the beloved community does is it helps us to have something that we wouldn't have found just by ourselves. How is it that that's happened for you? And how is that happening today for you? That you're finding in us the solutions for you?
I have 2 very big things that are getting me through right now. One, I've had these severe health problems for a good portion of my adult life, but over 10 years now, I have this angel named Luz, who comes into my world 3 times a week, and she takes me on errands if I need to, and she cleans my home, she organizes my life, it's like she came to me when I was totally bedridden, and Pima Council on Aging has allowed her to stay with me now for over 10 years. And we both have grandchildren about the same age, so we share stories and pictures of our grandchildren. She has 4 boys, So, and we're always talking about our kids and stuff. And it's like, she's family, you know, it's like, she knows me probably better than anybody else, including my health problems in and out. And the other thing is very recent. And I did this Zoom book club with a group from, let me get this right, United Church of Christ, UCC, I think.
United Church of
And
Christ.
yeah, and it was a book, it's a book called Revolutionary Love. And this book has literally, and this group has changed fundamentally what I want out of this world and for my country. And it's, and Rabbi Michael Lerner wrote the book, and it's a prescription for how we can change our society into one that's based on compassion and love and caring and healing, instead of meritocracy and all the other isms and stuff that are in this world. And it's a very concrete, laid out plan. And we actually got to discuss things with Rabbi Lerner last Monday. And it's like this group now is going off into tangents, forming, because his whole thing is to form these small groups where it's not going to be totally unidealistic or impossible to do this mission of changing society, because we do it. He said he looks at the women's movement, how much it changed things. And he said, it's like we need compassionate consciousness raising in groups, small groups, and then spread out from there. And it's like, I can't even tell you how much this has given me hope.
Yeah. But I think that consciousness raising only happens or happens best when we are with each other. Can I raise my consciousness by myself? Absolutely. As an introvert, I love to think that I can do it all by myself. But I realize that most of my best insights come because you say something that turns on some vision inside of me. And without you having been there to say that which you say, I might never have that turned on inside of me. That by myself.
That's why it's a group effort. It's like forming small groups and stuff and there's training he's like working on training compassionate leaders all around the country who do form small groups. And I know United Church of Christ is working on following a lot of his path.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other two functions that I think the community really does for us, and you've kind of touched on them, Judy, is that they bear our pain and sorrow. Somehow they walk with us in whatever the difficulties are. But second of all, they magnify us. They show us something bigger than what we are by ourselves. They give us a vision or grow the vision within us that's there. And so what we have to ask is, how is it that we can be that for each other? How is it that we can both show something we haven't seen before, magnify each other, and carry us through the difficulties that get in the way? How do we do that for each other in this particular beloved community? And as we end the class, how do we continue to be that community for each other? How do we not let the ending of something stop the beloved community? It would be simple on Sunday morning. You know, typically we could come back and say, oh yeah, you were in that class with me, I still feel that. But Sunday morning isn't as easy that way. We're going to have to be much more intentional about how to make this happen. How do we continue to draw in the Minnesotans among us and keep all of us connected? So how would you like to do that? How do we continue our Sangha? Mary.
Hi, I'm in the Soul Connection class on Monday at 4 o'clock, which is just kind of a connecting, how is it with your soul is the question every week. It's a great class. And I think, while we're in this pandemic and not be able to be in person, that kind of thing is wonderful. I mean, so is this, all the book study too is great, but just something like that. I mean, I know you talked about quarantines. I'm not on a quarantine for whatever reason, but I am going to that class now, and that feels like a great connection to me. So I just think all these Zoom things we're doing are really wonderful.
And just know that at least that's at least one of the reasons why I've mentioned quarantines. So if you want to have a group, if any of you want to form a group together that continues to meet, I'll give you a number that you can use to Zoom whenever you want to, right? To continue being in that space. One of the things that's getting me through this is I have a friend named Ed. He used to be the pastor out at Desert Skies. He's retired now. And we have met now for about 5 years every Wednesday. We just sit and talk to each other and complain about you guys. We just share life, right? And he is essentially my quarantine. And helps me to have a perspective that's larger than mine. He is the beloved community that grows me. So how would you like to do that? How many have learned to trust each other better in this community? I've loved the time that we've been together and the sharing that you've done, the glimpses of healing, the glimpses of peace, the glimpses of more than what I see. I've loved the ways you've listened to each other and the ways you've shared honestly. How do we continue that?
Jim, you had mentioned something about of doing a class around films.
Yes.
What would that look like?
Typically what I've done is I've done that class before is we've just chosen a bunch of films. Each week, everyone watches it sometime ahead of time, and we just say, in this act of creation, the film, how do we see the creator that is talked about in our scriptures? How does that creator show up? So where is God present in there? What's it say about us, the creation, both in good and bad ways? And so it just asks those types of questions. And what glimpses does it give us in the midst of whatever we're going through? So if you want to, one of the things I will send to you is my what I call my favorite movie. Have I shown you my favorite movie before?
No.
Hold on just a second, I'll show you. Let me get there. Sorry about this. Just taking a little bit of time. Okay, so here is my favorite movie. That's not enough. Here's the second page. It's as many movies as I could fit on one sheet of paper. And it's all these things that have spoken to me in wondrous ways through the years. And so I give people that and say, if any of these speaks to you, let's talk about it. So Joni and I the other day went back and watched Rosewood, which is right here. It's a movie about a little town in Florida that all of a sudden the white residents rose up against the black residents and essentially wiped out Black Rosewood. And it's a remarkable movie that speaks very clearly about today's time. And so in that there's a lot of how do we make sure that doesn't happen today. So if you want me to, I'll send this all to you. You can start choosing which are your favorite movies to look at. And we can just start having conversations around it. It's not the individual movie that's important. It's the conversation that we have around it that's important. And the movie gives us a space to be able to be in conversation. Because I believe you can find God, the divine, in any act of creation. And movies are just a particularly easy one for us to enter into corporately. So we'll begin that in a couple weeks. Go ahead.
I would be very interested in that.
So would I.
Yeah.
That's one idea. I was also going to say what we were talking about before that came up, which was just informally, if any of us want to, we could set a time. It could be this time, because it seems like it's a convenient time for all of us who are here right now. Just continue doing this more like this Monday afternoon group, which I haven't been involved in because that's a time that I'm committed to something else. But, that's another option. Just keep things going on Wednesday morning at 10 for whoever wants to.
So here's what's I think important. Right at the beginning, right at the beginning of the chapter, they say this: our beloved community, our Sangha, is a group of people who together practice generating mindfulness, concentration, and insight. Everyone feels embraced and supported by the collective energy generated. That's the goal that you're trying to do, is to somehow purposely practice being together, thinking, being, talking, communicating together in some kind of way that I feel your energy and you feel my energy, and all of us are augmented by what we do together. On the sheet of paper I'll give you, that's the quote right at the very beginning of that, and I think that's our goal, is to try to be in that type of community and be that type of community for each other.
Margie, I'd be interested in that concept, because I do the Monday soul connections thing. I did it this last Monday, but it's good that stays small. It's like, because we share really, really, it allows for more intimacy, and I guess this group too. And I feel like I'm an outlier at St. Francis. I'm not really deeply a part of anything. I did the choir for a while, but when my health started tanking, I can't be there in person. And Zoom has allowed me to be a part of the church in a way that I wasn't before.
I would be particularly interested in having the format of a movie as a focalizer for a discussion each week or time, because that's just something that I have appreciated over the years, is the role that movies can play. And that would really be more of appealing to me, is to have that kind of opportunity, rather than just an open, unstructured discussion, I think.
So here's what I'm going to do. I will set up the movie class. It'll probably start in about 2 weeks. So we'll have 2 or 3 weeks of a break. But during that time, I invite you to continue to meet during this hour, to just continue to be in conversation. How does everyone get here? Do you go to the website and click in that way? All right, what you may need to do, because probably as soon as this class ends, then Karen will probably take that link off. But the good news is that the same link, all the different classes work off of the same number. So if you click on the white fragility class, you still get to this same place. Okay, does that make sense? So even if there's not a fear link any longer, you can click on the Book of Joy link and you'll get here. So I won't come for the next couple of weeks, just as I'm doing some different things, but you might want to just kind of make that connection to keep staying together for a few more weeks, and then figure out how you want to do it. And if you want your own link, then I'll give it to you. Now, the hard part about this is we got to figure out how to make it so that we don't conflict, because my account can't have 2 meetings going on at the same time. And so if I start up the movie class, then we can't have the more informal sharing going on at the same time. So we're going to have to figure out how to do that. But I invite you to continue to be in some kind of conversation with each other, because what you've done already has grown my spirit tremendously. And so continue to grow each other's spirit, right? I think in that conversation, we've all been better.
Does anybody need the number? I have it here for signing in.
I can put the link on the chat space if you'd like to cut and paste it. But like I said, if you just continue to go into the same way that you got into this class, and just click on any of the other links, you'll be able to get here.
Okay.
So at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, we just put that link in, and it will bring us all together in this format. Is that right?
Exactly right. You don't need, anybody can, I tried to set up all the links so that I don't have to be there first.
Yeah.
Right? So any of you can essentially be the group leader. Okay.
Good. Can I ask Judy, you were talking about a book before, Revolutionary Love. Who was the author? Could you say that again?
Rabbi Michael Lerner.
Lerner, yeah.
L-E-R-N-E-R.
I think probably, we don't have the library available. St. Francis Library has some of Michael Lerner's stuff.
Okay. Okay.
Well, Melissa will help you out with the library if you want to negotiate with her individually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have something to add. The movie group sounds great. I am going back to work in 2 weeks at TUSD, so I will not be able to access 10 o'clock. But I'd still watch the movies and listen to your conversation. The record.
Yeah, the recording.
So I would still be interested in that. And also a quick question to Margie. I just put my phone number up in the chat. I would love to talk to you about the choir, if you would be willing to call me.
Yeah. And the nice thing about the Raggedy Band right now is everyone is singing from their own space and coming together to be that group. And so you can sing with the Raggedy Band that way.
The choir is actually on vacation right now because it's summer.
I mean, not the choir, the Raggedy Band.
The band. Okay. Well, I can put, okay.
I just have a couple questions for you personally, if you would call me at that number anytime. And I just have it's the Raggedy Band, not the choir, sorry.
Okay.
So on the chat space, I put a link to that book, Revolutionary Love. And so if you'd like to look at it, just click on that and it'll take you to Amazon.
I think it'd be incredible for our church to do a little book thing with that.
Yeah.
It's a really, really powerful book.
Yeah. And think about other ideas like that, because sometimes good conversation for us happens around, I'm not trying to downplay Thich Nhat Hanh because he is an amazing thinker, but much of his thought allowed us to be able to think even better, right? And another book will also help us to do that. So think about what book you might want to continue to be in conversation around, and what will help what's been going on here to continue. I love one particular piece of what he said, the thing that hit me the hardest in this chapter. He said, I believe that the next Buddha will no longer be an individual. It will be a Sangha, because one Buddha is no longer enough. We have to be a Sangha. We have to be a community, a beloved community that acts out of love in some way in response to all the stuff that is going on. Because there's a lot of stuff that is tough. So one of my good friends is Ben. He's my baby daddy, I call him. His kids are my godchildren, and I love his daughter and his son. And Ben he is Border Patrol, and he just got deployed up in Oregon. Some of the black shirts, right? Which is tearing my soul apart because, right, that which he has to do as a job makes it so that I have to figure out how to be a community with him very differently. How do I continue to love him even though he's part of that oppositional thing for me? But I think that my relationship with him and his relationship with me is what will change that situation. Both him and I, and how we deal with that. Right? And there's how many of you have at least somebody like Ben in your life that is somewhere across some line, right? It is our relationship and the way we continue to be the beloved community for each other that will transform that. Okay? So continue to meet here. When I start the movie class in a few weeks, then we're going to have to figure out a different way for you guys to meet. Maybe I can get you a free account or something that will allow you to continue to meet, and we can set that up. But we'll work on that. Okay. Thank you for our time together. Thank you for the love you've shown to each other, the ways that you have truly lived out the best of what it means to be a beloved community, because you have truly blessed me in the midst of all this. Thank you for being a blessing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
Bye
Jim.
now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Blessings, everyone.
You too.